have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another interview edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name is Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker. And today we have with us Chris Prefontaine. He is a best-selling author and real estate investor with over 26 years of experience in the field, including 18 years as a builder, realtor, broker owner, and investor. Chris founded Smart Real Estate Coach in 2014. The company coaches investors on how to scale and automate their business throughout the U.S. and Canada, all without using their own cash or credit. Mr. Prefontaine, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Robert. I am looking forward to our chat.
Yeah, you know, it's always great to particularly talk to folks who've been around a little while. I've had quite a few guests who the day they started into real estate or they started getting interested in it was 2008, 2009. So that's a nice time to get involved, but it's nice to talk to folks who've been around long enough to have built sort of their empire, I guess you could say their personal empire, had it get hit by that downturn and then rebuilt after. So I'm sure there's insights you can share with us there. But before we jump into those, if you could give, and granted, you've been around a long time, but what led you to real estate? What got you started? What were those first steps for you?
Man, you are racking my brain. So this would be going back, I'm going to date myself, but this would be going back to 91. Okay. What happened, Robert, was I was in a family company. I grew up in a family company. It was not real estate. It was actually industrial supplies and gases, so nothing to do with it. But here was the connect. My dad would build our own buildings around New England. I think we had like 5 branches at the time, commercial buildings, and then he would have the company rent them back from him. He would also take raw land, permit it, and flip it. And so those were my exposures to real estate. Got me excited. I also, way back then, read, I think it was The Art of the Deal, Trump's very first book. That got me excited. You're talking 80s when I did that.
Yeah.
So that was it. And then 91, my dad sold his company and asked me if I cared. And I said no. We had just started doing some building, and we were doing great with it. So my foray was when he sold his company, I started building full time, and I never had built a home in my life.
And when you say you built it, what kind of a team did you assemble, or were you really doing an awful lot of this, like as you as the general contractor kind of thing?
It was interesting. So this you find this one comical probably. So I was driving to our branches at one time, and until you just asked that question, I hadn't thought about this, but I heard an old Earl Nightingale tape, who's no longer with us. And in that tape, he talked about a gentleman that during the Depression, I think it was, went around and asked landowners if he could stick a sign on their lot and pre-sell their land. And so literally that night, I went back, called a buddy of mine that I knew did homes, but he built homes. I was never in the field building homes. We went around, we put our sign on lots that were single lots in developments that were already set up. And then we would tell that owner, granted it was 91, so people weren't flush with cash then and things weren't selling too quickly. So we said, look, we'll pre-sell a package of finished home on your lot, but we need to build the home on your lot. We'll pay you when we close it out. And so we told all the vendors that same thing, lumber, everything, and we would pre-sell the home, get a down payment, and then not pay anyone until the home was built. And that's what we started building. We built several hundred.
Wow, that's actually kind of amazing. You know, believe it or not, we're both from the same general era in terms of when we got into this business. I got my real estate license in 1988. And that it's funny you mentioned 1991 because that was right around the savings and loan crisis, right at just before that. And I remember doing real estate at that time, watching properties just steadily go down in price, down in price, down in price. And I think it was 1990, and what interest rates were 11% right around then. I
always had 10. Yeah. I just figured 10% back then. Now my kids say they see 5%. They think rates are high. So you kidding me?
Yeah. Well, and what's funny is then I remember the weekend sitting as a young real estate agent, and I think it was a Century 21 office at the time, the day interest rates went to 9.9 or 9.8, and everybody freaked out, and suddenly every property that was on the market sold. The inventory went out like in a week. So all these great investment properties I'd been holding in my pocket, hoping to make a really great aggressive offer on, just disappeared. It's interesting to see somebody kind of coming up with an interesting idea, an interesting approach like you did, kind of in that same time period. And people don't get that you may be mentally calibrated to a less than 5% interest rate, but that is not normal at all.
Well, and here's something probably would have kept, I just thought of this, kept most people out of the business. So my first home I bought in think it was 88, a couple years after we got married. And then when I sold that in 90 or 91 to build my home, my first home that I built myself, we lost a good, I don't know, 35 or 40 grand. And at that time, at our age, I mean, that was a big deal. I was 20 years old or whatever I was, 22 years old. That was a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and from there, you jump into real estate. You kind of got into it as a segue from your father's business, because there was obviously the acquisition of property involved in that side of the business. And then you had that great entrepreneurial moment where you weren't paying everybody until all the money got. What moved you forward? What were some of the big things that really got you moving forward in the business?
Well, my partner was at the time, and it was an unfortunate parting later on, mid-90s, but that's the case with too many partnerships. Yeah. But I still see him, and, we can say hello. It's not that bad. But during the time, he knew what he was doing in the field. So we would set up checklists, and we would set up systems. I'm a systems-driven guy, and we ended up building like 50 a year of these things, and had a small team. I think at that time, maybe 2 or 3 people with us. It wasn't that big. And then we got a little too cocky for our own britches, and we started a subdivision somewhere around 94. Took it on the chin with that, and I said, okay, enough with the building, and I went off and became a realtor at that time, because I knew, hey, I didn't like realtors when I was a builder, but I knew I could hustle and do that, so I ended up really falling in love with that for a while. And I was a realtor for a little while with Remax to kind of cut my teeth, and then I bought a Realty Executives franchise in 95. Realty Executives, they were out of Cape Cod, Massachusetts. I bought the greater Worcester County area, and then I sold that to Coldwell Banker in 2000. And then from 2000 till about 4 or 5, we did 2 things. We were doing a lot of condo conversions, because that was supporting that at that point. And we would do that with 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 6 unit buildings, small. And then I was coaching realtors at the time, actually, only throughout U.S. and Canada, all like $500,000, $1 million and up earners, really had to, scale their business and get their life back. Because usually when they're spinning that many deals, some things can be out of control. Yeah.
Now, just for the folks out there there's different terms used across the country for different types of property. Can you let my listeners know what is a condo conversion?
Okay, so we would buy pretty common was 3-unit building. We would buy a multifamily 3-unit. We did it in Rhode Island and Mass. And then we would go to an engineer, hire an attorney, and they would develop the floor plans and the condominium documents to convert this 3-unit building into 3 condos. Right. Sold separately, deeded separately, et cetera. So there's a little upfront work to be done with the engineer and the attorney. Then we would literally do very basic, Robert. I'm talking about paint, flooring, maybe fix up the kitchens, because the market was so hot, we'd be halfway through and these things would sell. Yeah. So it was a great little run when the market supported that. And then, of course, everybody catches on. The multis pricing goes through the roof, and then it's no longer viable.
Right. Okay. Now, after that, you jumped into what?
Okay, so 2000, I was coaching realtors. It tied me to my desk, but it was a great experience of coaching people. We were doing those condo conversions all the way till the crash, till 08. Okay. That brought us right till the 08 debacle.
Okay, and since then, what have you been up to?
That caused us to 08 to 12 was a nightmare. It was me working almost full time with short sales, with foreclosures, with debt workouts, all kinds of stuff to clean up the mess I created. So starting in 2013, I just made a real simple list of things we're not going to do. So what we do now, and it was all because of the debacle, so I wouldn't take it back for anything, the problems we had. We buy now on terms, meaning we buy lease purchase or owner financing, or a third way is subject to the existing financing. But the key point there is we do not ever, still have not, since 2013 sign on any personal loans, pledge our credit for anything, nothing ever. So these are all bought and controlled without using our money and without using our credit or bank funds.
And that is where I wanted us to hit. That is a super interesting subject. Obviously, everyone, there's the fundamental surface sexiness of being able to even say that, but the gears of it take a different kind of mindset. And I think you're someone who can give us a lot of insight to that. Now, I want to go ahead and jump into that, but before we do, because I don't want to interrupt that part of the interview, I want to take a quick break. But when we come back, we're going to talk about how Chris Prefontaine makes the magic happen without signing any loans. So don't go away. We'll be right back. Are you ready to jump in and start your search for your first investment property? Maybe you've decided that it's time to own your own home, or maybe you're ready to sell your home and move on to something new. No matter what your goal is, the Rebel Broker can help. That's right, aside from hosting this show, I am also the owner, broker of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services right here in Silicon Valley. With over 25 years experience serving Silicon Valley, Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, I or one of my great agents can help you achieve your goals in real estate. So if you're ready to look into taking that next step towards achieving your real estate goals, point your browser at www.soldbyrobert.com. That's www.soldbyrobert.com and get in touch. Let me show you how I will earn your business and your respect. Again, that's www.soldbyrobert.com, or you can call me at 408-852-0525. California Bureau of Real Estate ID 00984-909. Welcome back, everyone. We are continuing our chat with Chris Prefontaine, author, and as we're about to discover, financing master, because he is not the guy who's going to be signing those conventional loans that so many folks do on a day-to-day basis. Chris, you want to sort of lay out in maybe some broad strokes to start, what's your process for being able to purchase in that way on terms? Sure.
10,000-foot view answer would be these are sellers because your audience, like mine, like everyone, says, well, why would a seller do that?
Yeah.
Why don't they just sell with a broker? Well, these are sellers that either A, and no priority order here, either A, couldn't sell with a realtor for whatever reason, functionality, upside down. If I pay you and even if I get full price, I got to come out of pocket. Behind on payments, anything that says, I couldn't get this sold with a realtor or conventionally on my own. So that's one group. The second group, so B would be the seller that I do a lot of these that are debt free when I meet them. So they're not desperate at all.
Right.
They want the most money and they don't need or want the cash today. Those are great sellers. Those are the two main category.
Okay. And how do you find these folks? A lot of folks think, well, how are you ever going to find someone like this? These people aren't just going to come up to me. And that's true. You have to be the one who actually goes and looks for these folks. How do you do that?
Well, okay, so we have it's my son-in-law and my son Nick primarily that run the buying and selling entity, and then of course we coach it and have students doing the same thing we do around the country. Mm-hmm. So here's how we do it, and here's how we teach it. We have a lot of this is automated, so we will. A big part of our market is expired listings. A big part, because even in a smoking hot market, we'll find expired listings.
Okay, so I'd like to pause right there real quick because this is the number one thing that I get listeners talking about. They'll say, well, Robert, you're in Silicon Valley, so things are insane there. You can never find deals like that there, but people do find them here. Give us an example of a market that's super hot where your efforts have still brought deals that can work. It may take longer, maybe less per 100 attempts, but what's a market where you can say, yeah, you know what, I've made it happen there?
Yeah, you said a key thing. You just got to know your numbers and be patient. Say, okay, if it's instead of 30 leads to get a deal, it might be 45. So I'll give you two great examples. Washington, D.C. is smoking hot right now, and I've got a gentleman who's 72 years old who started his first closing or first deal like we do it was in January of 18. He's done 7. He's amassed in the 3 paydays we create per deal. He has amassed over $700,000.
Wow.
You're talking 6 months. Now, he had to work 6 months before that. Don't get me wrong. But he started hitting stride by January. So it'll be a year coming up, and he's created $700,000 in 3 paydays. And then Orlando is another one that comes to mind. Really hot market. And one of our top earners is there as well.
And obviously I'm not going to try to entice you to give away the whole story here, but what is one good nugget that you use to find these folks? Now, I've dabbled with Facebook ads to find folks that make good investors, because the key for me, and maybe you'll disagree, maybe you won't, you need to find these folks before they're in the system in order to gain the best possible situation for your investment. Is that something you agree with, or do you think that's not necessarily the case?
So you're talking about the sellers?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd like to talk to them first, but sometimes, Robert, if they're frustrated and don't want another call from, say, a realtor or anyone, and I can provide a solution, because that's all we're doing, right? I'm not selling anyone anything. I'm trying to provide a solution. So we get all of these expired listings and the for sale by owner listings all from one lead source called My Plus Leads.
And those are those are just basically feeds that come off of whatever the status is of a property through the MLS.
Yeah. The FSBOs no, but the expireds, yes, absolutely. Same thing a realtor could get their hands on. And so here's the differentiating factor. We automate it. We've got a system called the expired dialing process that hits 400 or 500 at a time. And then, the cream of the crop calls us back. And then we have virtual assistants that call all the for sale by owners and provide us property sheets of only those that want to talk to us. So why do I share that? I don't want to call people that don't want to talk to us. So I'm going to call someone that already said in some shape, form, or fashion, yeah, I want to talk to you about doing this on terms or lease purchase or whatever you have for a solution for me.
So that's interesting. Is this an in-house thing, or are you paying a third party to do this filtering for you?
Okay, so when I say virtual assistant, we hire that out. Some of our students have access to the very same person we use, but if not, there's still 2 other services that we recommend that are fantastic, and we vetted them. So they call for us. Then we get a property information sheet that says, hey, I spoke to Robert. He's selling, and yes, he's open to lease purchase or owner financing.
Okay. Now, talk to us a little about lease purchase. I call them lease options. That's what we call them here on the West Coast. I love lease options. I think they're one of the most amazing things ever, and partially because you're delaying things, but also because if you write the terms right, you're contributing towards a better deal once you do decide to make the move. Talk to me a little bit about how you're using them.
Okay, so we use it with the classic sandwich lease setup. So you're my seller. I'm going to assume you have an underlying mortgage. I'm going to be paying your mortgage for you. But the day I start paying your mortgage is the day I install my tenant buyer, and it's also the day that I lock in your equity. Let me give you an example. You owe $150. We agree together that your home's worth $200. I say to you, okay, Robert, I'm guaranteeing you $50,000 at the end of the term. Let's call it 3 years, pretty standard. But that you're getting $50,000. You're not getting $200,000 because I'm going to give you $50,000 and I'm going to pay off the underlying loan, which is obviously principal pay down is going to my benefit throughout that term. I take over all maintenance, responsibility, everything because I'm going to pass that on to my buyer anyway. Right.
And this technique you're finding works great for folks in both situations you've described, where they own the property outright, or how would you manage this in the other extreme where somebody's upside down?
Yeah, good question. So we did many in 2013, 14, and 15 where they were either right at value or over leveraged. If that's the case, remember when you're doing things in terms, what's important? The length of the term. So sure. if someone's over leveraged, I've done several that we wrote at 7 and 9 years. 7 and 9 years. So there's massive principal pay down, and hopefully the market went up too. But if it didn't, it's okay. I mean, 9 years, you're going to get a lot of principal pay down. So that's the solution to someone that's all messed up. Or if they're not too over leveraged and they don't mind deeding us the property, then we will purchase it with the loan staying in place and staying in their name.
Oh, okay. All right. That was going to be my next question is how do you even manage that in that scenario? You wouldn't because you wouldn't be able to put the loan in your name. So you're technically leaving them in a paper ownership of the property. They've just deeded their future interest to you.
They deed their interest, and we keep them on paper with the mortgage company only because I own the house now, or my company, whoever. Right. But they are on that loan, so I'll get an email every 4, 5, 6 months from some of these. Say, hey, did you cash it out yet, or what's the plan? And I just say, I'll keep you updated. I'm paying your payment. You're up. Your credit's looking good now. It was trash before, perhaps, or so they're usually fine. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, that's kind of creative. I don't think a lot of folks would immediately jump to that right off the bat. Now, would you call these techniques more for the advanced investor, someone who's maybe a little bit further along, feels a little bit more comfortable? Or would you say, hey, given what you could offer as a coach, this is something folks could jump into right away?
Yeah, no, good question. If I look at all our what we call them associates, but we're doing deals with these guys around the country and we're rev sharing. And if I look at my entire list, I would render to guess it's probably 50, maybe even 60 or 70% not experienced. Who comes to mind is an engineer in Pennsylvania. And he had zero experience, just tried to study courses and he spent too much money on stuff that didn't work and didn't do any deals. And then he came to us and he's cranking. So the new and the experience for sure.
And so what is it? Let's play pretend for a minute. Robert Whitelaw is now one of your associates through your coaching system. What does that look like to me? Is this a a Skype conversation once a week? Is this online courses I'm taking? Am I coming and visiting you physically? What does it mean to be in that position with you?
Okay, so if you're an associate, and by the way, we have a very simple system to get you to an associate, and it's worth bringing up because a lot of your listeners probably are used to the I call it the conventional way of, they go to a preview seminar for $0 to $100. That puts them into some event for $4 or $5 grand, and that puts them into something else. Here's what we do. We have a free webinar. It's an hour of content. If you can deal with listening to me for 61 minutes, you get an hour of content. After that, they can purchase and it's a prerequisite to anything, because if you're serious, I want you to go through the online course. There's 60 plus videos in there. It's very robust. If I carved that up, Robert, and by the conventional term, and people out there doing this, I'd put 5 or 6 products together. I lay it all in one course online. It's under $1,000. After that, they'll either go do deals on their own and go at their pace, or they will apply to be an associate. If they are an associate, to finally get to your answer, they will do this. It's not a weekly call only. That's too limiting. It's too risky, in my opinion, to try to do deals like that. So they have a few calls to set things up. I mean, literally set things up like we do. All the lead gen, all the systems, the checklists, everything. And then it's as needed. So if you're doing heavy deals, I might be talking to you every single day, and there's plenty of them that I do, or my son-in-law or my son will. And if you need help with paperwork and forms and things like that, you might be talking to my daughter or Lauren. So there's someone here for each area of the business, and that's pretty tough to man. In other words, I don't know of another system out there that someone can say, look, you come in, you got our whole family team. It's pretty tough to provide people to do that, and we got it because we do it every day ourselves.
Yeah. And you mentioned you're a systems guy, so I'm guessing that this is a very structured, step-by-step process that you're promoting for your folks.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because someone said to me recently, it was one of my mentors, they said, geez, you seem like you're more like a logical person. Like if people don't do deals, you just scratch your head going, I don't understand. It's if A, then B, if B, then C. I do look at it that way. It's very systematic. It's very predictable when it's done properly, right? They got to work. And what helps that is they do get an office visit here with us, because you mentioned, do they visit you? They get a 2-day office visit. They meet with each one of us in our office. They're seeing it live. It's nothing fancy. They are seeing us work live. Mm-hmm. The next day, they're going to go to dinner with us at night. The next day, they're going to go on the road with Zach, my son-in-law, and actually go to our appointments with us. And then for the 2 higher levels of associate level participation, I fly to them. I just returned from a second visit to Washington, D.C., and this visit had nothing to do with me going on appointments with him. He's doing deals now, so it was all about systems, to your question, all about organizing, all about time blocking with me right in his office.
Yeah, and I think that's worth mentioning at this point, and this is something we've touched on this show a bunch in terms of success strategies, and everybody wants that magic bullet, and a lot of times guys like you will take criticism because, he's just selling another system or whatever they want to say. But from what I've learned from interacting with folks who've tried lots of different systems, what you end up discovering is they may have done some of the system, but if you treat it like the recipe that it is and commit yourself to executing, particularly what sounds like something you've put together that has a proven track record of success, you really need to focus on your own execution. And the great thing about something like that is creativity comes from repetition, right? So with something like yours, when you follow the steps and you internalize it, you make it muscle memory, right? That's when the part of your brain that's more creative kicks in, and suddenly you take it to this level that even goes beyond the steps, right? I mean, am I getting a little too philosophical here, or does this ring even vaguely true for you?
No, it's absolutely true, because here's the deal. We had, I think it was 7 of them. We call them our high 6 associates. So this will be the highest level we have. We had 6 or 7 of them in for a private mastermind. It's another benefit of being an associate. And they all agreed 100% across the board that this is not about, they all get the same training. They all have all of us in the family. So most of this is between the ears, because that's the only thing stopping them. Assuming, like you said, they're doing everything else, A through Z. They're not skipping pieces. It's like, right. Here's the recipe to the dinner we just had. It was awesome. I think I'll go home and try, 40% of the ingredients, and I'll skip that one. I'll change that. Well, it's not going to be the same. But if they follow everything and they can work on what's between the ears, and we help them with that, then they're going to have a phenomenal experience. It's just a matter of how quickly they can get to that point. I don't know if that makes sense to you. Like, I had a guy on the phone the other day, brand new. And his survey said that we do a questionnaire for them. And so the questionnaire said, my last year's income was 40, and the year before that it was 50 or something like that. But his goal was 900,000. I said, okay, so-and-so, we got to work on, there's a bridge here. You can get there, but you got to become the person that can earn 900 first. You haven't done it yet. So we got to work on that at the same time.
Yeah. And, I sometimes I get maybe too philosophical about this stuff, but I mean, what I find is that folks tend to skip the steps that make them most uncomfortable with this idea that, well, you know what, if I just skip this one part, then maybe I'll make 15% less, and I'm happy with that. Whereas it doesn't work that way, right? If you exclude the flour from making the cake, you don't get a cake. Right. So, and the idea that you can skip a thing in baseball, if you don't learn to hit the ball, you're not going to do well, even if you're really good at all the other elements, right? And then even in the context of that, you may learn the mechanics of hitting a ball, but it takes the guy who's now taken it to the next level, who's mastered the basics, the step-by-step of hitting a ball, to become that amazing hitter, right? And it's the same thing with anything, including a system like what you've set up.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny the way you started that with the uncomfortable, because I just did a video. We do YouTube videos every week, and one of them is a motivational Monday that we release. And one of the videos I titled something like you just said. It was "Get Comfortable with Being Uncomfortable," because it's a necessity.
Yeah. And you know what's odd, which may seem bizarre given the circumstances you and I are currently interacting under. When I first got into real estate, the part I hated the most was actually talking to someone. Like, for instance, cold calling. I despised cold calling. To be honest, I still despise cold calling. It never made sense to me to call 100 people and piss off 99 of them so one of them might be willing to listen to me talk to them. But if nothing will get you more comfortable with something that you're not comfortable with, than doing a whole lot of it and just embracing the idea that this is something you need to know how to do in order to succeed in what you've chosen to do. No one's making you do this stuff. Push through the stuff that makes you uncomfortable, and that's the only way you're really going to make it.
Yeah, I have two comments there. Actually, one is I remember like it was yesterday when I first became the realtor back in 95-ish. I remember my coach telling me to connect with 12 people a day, and I thought, man, oh man, I was shaking and sweating.
Yeah.
So you got to raise the bar, right? You got to do. If I'm having trouble with a student, how about you just try calling one person on your way home from work each day, and let's get a habit going. And then the second piece of that is, as an associate, they actually role play with us, mostly done with my son-in-law Zach. So they get a live role play session, and they get to have us critique that, work with that, massage that, and they get better and better. There's no better way to speed up the learning curve than to do a role play. And in the states that we're allowed to, if they tape their call and send it to us, we critique it. That just cuts the learning curve down incredibly.
Yeah. And that's another good example of a place where once you've mastered the script or the points you're supposed to make when you're in a call, what you can take it to, so many of that stuff sounds mechanical, right? As a person who gets these calls, I know when someone's reading off a script to me. It's the person who's now internalized the message, and it becomes part of the way they talk, as opposed to something they're just repeating, right? And you need to understand that when you're first in that process, where you're first learning it, you're going to get a lot more turndowns, and then magically at some point, you will internalize what that script is, and the folks won't key on the fact you're reading something, and you'll get through it. And suddenly you'll start having successes where you were absolutely not having successes before. And it's because your mastery of it has improved, right?
Yeah, but here's a mindset for them too. In addition to what you said, they if they just think this way, okay, so I'm going to sit down, I'm going to get on the phone. The people that I'm going to call, I don't know them for the most part. They never did business with me. So the worst case is I get off the phone and I'm in the same spot I was. No one's going to. I'm not going to die.
Right.
They don't know me now. Who cares?
Right. The annoying phone police aren't going to come knocking at your door to take away your cell phone. So you'll make it through just fine.
Everything will be good.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to ask you, what does it take in terms of? We've obviously hit a little bit on commitment level here, but if we try to balance that with someone who's just getting started, who's working their 40 hours in that 9-to-5 job, how easy is it to handle your system while folks are in that boat? And maybe even talk a little bit about the transition from I'm working 40 hours a week to I'm now an entrepreneur doing my own thing.
Yeah, phenomenal question. So here, it's always best for me to give you an exact example. So we've got a student in California.
Perfect example, because that's where I am.
Yep, he's 33 years old. He just had a baby. On top of that, I'm painting the schedule for you. He is in the produce business, and from about May 15th to October 15th, it is 6 days full on, driving an hour each way to commute. I mean, that's busy. He's one of the top earners. Why? He's systematic. He's coachable. He did his first deal by about month 3 or 4. His expectations, you use the enormous, that's a key word when I talk to people, because I think too many times people go into seminars or they're hearing ads and they're getting this expectation that tomorrow, this month, they can pop a deal, and this month they can make, $100,000 and everything will be solved. Well, maybe you'll luck out and do that, but the expectation has to be that, A, I'm in this for the long term. That's what he did in California. He said, look, I'm in this thing. This is a 3-year project for me. This is like a business. I'm going to do this. This is not a try. And then the second expectation is obviously how long it'll take you to do your first deal. Yeah. I have a police officer in PA that did his first deal in 30 days. Okay, so maybe there's some luck involved. I have other top partners right now that took them 6 months to do their first one, but now they're cranking. Yeah. So just set your expectations properly. They can do it, to answer your question, while they're doing their job. We just work around it. And then if you say to me, here, how do I transition? How do I do that? Well, let's set it up. How much do you need to transition? How much do you need coming in monthly and or in the bank? And let's set the 3 paydays up that we do on each deal, so that when we get to that point, we know, and then you pull the trigger. It's not ambiguous. It's very, very predictable when you set it up properly.
Yeah. Now, from your experience, you're a guy who has been a real estate agent and a real estate broker. How valuable do you think it is to have those designations or licenses as someone to participate in your program? Is it something that helps, something that hurts, neutral?
There's pros and cons. I can stay neutral on it because I was on both ends, right?
Right.
I have a partner in Orlando who is licensed. I have most of them that are not. If you are licensed and you already have a nice business, so in hindsight, if I knew this back then, here's the deal for you. There is no appointment that you will go on now that you can't walk away. Almost no, unless they're really far behind in arrears and you don't want to pay that. Right. But every other scenario that you'd walk away from as a broker that you couldn't list for whatever reason, you can buy. Yeah. And so now you go into a home, you are the solution. You're the expert, and you'll blow away the competition. If you're a realtor, you blow them away because they don't know how to do this.
Yeah, and that's we've both been through the realtor real estate broker thing. I've never been a huge fan of real estate agents, which is probably odd. Which is one reason I got my broker's license, so I'd never have to actually sit in the same office with an agent I didn't want to anymore. But yeah, and also in some states it could potentially put you at a disadvantage, because if someone wants to fight you later, you're considered more educated on the subject in the eyes of the courts, right? So you would need to be a little bit more careful, perhaps, in your disclosures relating to your status as a licensed agent, that type of thing. But other than that, it seems like it could be just another tool in the quiver for you as a real estate professional to walk away with maybe not a listing, but an investment property.
Yeah, so let me, at the risk of pissing someone off that's listening, so I gave the answer for a realtor. Now, if you're not a realtor, why do I think it's good? Right. Well, and why did I resign my license, and why did my son resign his license? Literally. Because in our case only, I can't speak for their area. If I did a mailing, let's say a postcard, or we don't do postcards, or a yellow letter, which we do more. It's just a mailing to a geographic area, mm-hmm. and there was a listing in there. I got barraged with phone calls whining, saying, why am I looking to get their listing? Because I was licensed. Now it's a total flip-flop, and it's a very positive and healthy relationship, because we'll get calls from realtors. They will send us referrals on deals they can't put together, or it's going to expire. Instead of leaving it on the table, they call us. So it's so much more productive for us and healthier, and I don't get any whining whatsoever, because I'm not part of their web and part of their world.
So just in the interest of full disclosure for you, Chris, I don't consider it a full show unless we've pissed off an awful lot of people. And if we've pissed off real estate agents, that is the extra bonus. That's the show where I finish that off with a nice shot of tequila and a downtown pub run. So,
well, if I did, fantastic. But I tell you what I'll do. When I kept alluding to 3 paydays per deal. Yeah. Our average right now is a little over $75,000 per deal. Wow. All 3 paydays. So if you're pissed off, good, come see us and we'll help you out.
Yep, good. All right. So this is kind of the crystal ball part that I like to get to with folks. You've survived the downturn of 2008. And then managed to thrive afterwards by being adaptable and creative and approaching new strategies in order to get where you wanted to be. Looking through the crystal ball now, you've got the experience of having also existed prior to 2008 in the real estate world. So who knows what warnings tickled your brain and thought, this doesn't seem quite right. I wonder if this will end badly. What do you see now? So many pundits are saying 2019, 2020 is the time frame for the next downturn. We talked about the yield curve on my last show because I'm all about sexiness on my show. So everybody wants to talk about the yield curve, where long-term and short-term treasuries, their rate of return inverts so that the long-term treasury now gives you less than the short-term treasury. Whenever that happens, historically for every single downturn since 1950, that has been a precursor of a recession within the next 6 to 24 months. So I'm just throwing that out there because I want to sound like I really know what I'm doing. What about you? What do you see? What does Chris see in the next 6 to 24 months?
Okay, first of all that sounds like hieroglyphics to me, like I can't even relate. So, and if you and I knew the answer, we'd be on the beach somewhere. But right. Just my thoughts. When things like there's a couple things, leverage comes to mind and cash comes to mind. In other words, there's a lot of cash still on the sidelines, and things aren't as over leveraged, in my opinion, out there in the general market. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Here, my opinion only is I'm going to cover both sides of the coin because I think it's not going to quote unquote crash. I think it could slow down or steady. Great, that's fantastic for us. If it crashes, great, that's fantastic for what we do. If it goes up, great, that's fantastic for what we do. So I'm happy either way. However, we are very, very pointedly going after deals that are heavy principal pay down because that leverages us, putting cash aside because that leverages us nicely. So being careful, but at the same time, I don't think it's going to crash incredibly ridiculous like it did before, but who knows? Like I said, you and I would be on the beach somewhere if we knew that answer.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And it's one of those things where everyone sounds really smart after the fact, right? When things take a huge dump and folks have anticipated it. But it's one of those things where I think everyone in the back of their head looks for reasons that sound reasonable and perfectly rational to not do something. And given your experience and my personal experience and the experience of lots of other folks I've talked to on the show, even if you do this and a downturn eats everything you've created, at that point in your life, you will be more prepared to move forward and succeed and thrive based on what you've learned and experienced than 99% of the rest of people on the planet. Do you agree with that, or is that just too much like Disneyland?
No, I couldn't agree more. But here's a thought on that. As you talk, I'm scribbling a bunch of notes. One of them on that note is this: hey, this is simple. If you're gonna pick a mentor, and I think you're crazy not to, and you can't relate to myself or Robert or someone else, it doesn't matter whoever you can relate to, just make sure they've been through enough and are still today, not 6 months ago, not a year ago, doing what you want to do today, because real estate changes too quickly for you to be chasing the gurus out there that are selling products and haven't done a deal in 16 years. It just doesn't, it's too risky for you. So you'll learn from that, but you'll also be in really good stead if you can latch on with someone that's been through it.
Yeah. Totally agree, Chris. Also, I'm ashamed that we have not yet mentioned your book, Real Estate on Your Terms. We've talked about those terms on today's show, so at least we've given folks a little bit of a preview. Aside from your book that I'm sure they can find on Amazon and all other respectable book outlets, where can everybody find you?
Simple. They can go to smartrealestatecoach.com. There's a free webinar there. Like I said earlier in the show, if you want to deal with me for another hour, you can listen to that for free. There's our own show, just like this one, and it's at smartrealestatecoachpodcast.com. And love to have you go on there and enjoy it.
Yeah, I'll make sure to put links to those two things in the show notes for today's show. So if you'd like to check out his podcast or his website, they will be there for your enjoyment. Chris Prefontaine, thank you once again for spending your valuable time with us. It's been great.
Well, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. Thank you.